Hey, what's going on, William?
Not much, Vic. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm doing well. How things been going? You been doing any wargaming lately?
I wargame every day, Vic. I'm an addict.
I know that's kind of a rhetorical question. I already knew the answer to it, but yeah. So that's great. What are you diving into these days?
I'm doing a non-historical scenario based around the Maryland campaign during the American Civil War. I'm playing actually a mirror match. I'm doing both one game as North, one game as South against the same opponent, so we can compare and contrast each other's strategies.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. So would you say that like your consumption deals mainly with like tabletop? Are you card? Are you digital?
Primarily digital. Actually, I'm a huge fan of War Game Design Studio and their variety of war games covering anywhere from, the ages of musket and pike, medieval era, to even contemporary up to modern day.
And they've got a pretty large catalog of stuff to choose from.
Pretty large. Actually, they do have some on, the Global War on Terror. I haven't looked to see if, I can find any of your units. If there's a Vic Rubel character out there.
Yeah, dude, if you had a Vic Rubel in Abu Hayat, the main thing you'd probably have to deal with is the time spent in the smoke pit, sleeping, and then cursing as I was falling down wadis would be your big dilemma.
I don't even need to buy the game to do that. I can just do that on a daily basis. Well, anyways, so yeah, definitely recommend War Game Design Studio. In fact, on the Marine Corps Association website, if you go to our professional development page, you see decision-making games and exercises. We actually have a discount section.
Oh, yeah. Is there a code that comes with that?
Yeah, it's MCA 25, capital M, capital C, capital A, 25, just the numerics, and you can go and get 25% off of any order for any amount of games you want. So if you buy, all 100 plus games, it's 25% off.
Buy one, 25% off.
Precisely.
Awesome. And then, so if I went to War Game Design Studios and I put in that discount code of MCA25, I'm in.
You're in, buddy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and you or anyone listening to this could put that code in, and then maybe if you're unfortunate enough, you'll actually face me on the battlefield. And
that would be unfortunate, especially for me. But especially as we are looking at we've had episodes where we've talked about on the show where we've talked about potential wars across the globe, and then limited training, and you never know when this stuff's going to go down. This is a great way to get your reps and sets in, right?
Exactly. You do this just to, on the side, it doesn't even take long to do a tournament anywhere from 2 to 5, 10, 15, even up to 30 minutes. So really as much time as you really need to dedicate toward it. And it just could be a quick mental game for you to figure out how to solve a particular problem. Even if you're getting your butt handed to you, it's okay, shoot, I'm losing. How can I dig myself out of this hole is sometimes a question that many people might need to ask themselves.
And if you need to break from, you don't want to go cold turkey from your computer, but you feel like you need a break, this is a great way to get off of TikTok and social media and just focus and actually develop your brain rather than rotting it.
Exactly, precisely. So definitely go ahead on our website, check out the Marine Corps Association Professional Development page, get that code MCA25 and go ahead and get your reps and sets in on the wargaming.
All right, let's do it. Hey Scuttlebutt listeners, welcome to episode 222. This week we welcome Michael Jerome Plunkett to the show. Michael is a former machine gunner, EMT, co-founder and executive director of the Literature of War Foundation with friend of the show Lieutenant Colonel Tom Schumann, and host of the Lit War podcast. He was also a Virginia Center for the Creative Arts Fellow in 2021, was a scholar in the 2024 Stand To Veteran Leadership Program at the George W. Bush Presidential Center, and was a 2025 resident in the Edith Wharton Writing Residency. He also led the PB Abate Book Club for veterans. And if that wasn't enough, he's the author of the amazing book Zone Rouge, which was published in September this year and has received high praise for its beautiful prose. Michael talks to us about his journey from a teenager in New York during 9/11 to stepping on the yellow footprints to becoming an author. This was such a fun conversation, and we totally nerd out on the beauty of good writing and the value veterans bring to the art. We have to get him back on, but we hope you enjoy this episode as much as we do. This is episode 222. Hey, Scuttlebutt listeners, thank you for your continued support and for tuning in to this wonderfully in-depth forum that we call a podcast. I don't know if you guys are aware of this genre of podcast, but we're in it, and we are here today. I am Vic. I'm here with Nancy.
Hey, Vic. Good morning.
Good morning to you. 24 years ago.
Yeah.
This morning, and I've talked about this on the show, so fast forward 30 seconds if you're tired of hearing of it. But 24 years ago, I had just come out of PT formation, or out of PT, and was in my office at the company headquarters, just checking emails before morning formation. And my sergeant came in and said, "Hey, sir, somebody just flew an airplane into the World Trade Center." And I remember thinking, what an idiot. How the fuck do you, and that, because I wasn't thinking of like a 747 or, 757 or everything. I was thinking of a private airplane.
Sure.
And I do remember not too much before that, someone had actually in Miami had flown a private aircraft into a skyscraper, and it was turned out, I think it was like a teenager who was learning or whatever. So I'm like, Jesus. So still didn't quite, and I was doing the thing we were just talking about. I was in my computer while someone was talking to me, so I only appeared to be sort of paying attention, and so I think he gave me sort of the hairy eyeball, like that was a shitty response, Said he was to go down to the ramp, morning formation, and our CO said, called, company attention, everybody, fall out, go up to the common area. Holy shit! And this is before everybody had TVs and stuff. So you had to go to the barracks common room to get. And so everybody piles into their cars or, gets some formation, marches up to the barracks, go in the common area. And right as I walk in on the TV, I see the second plane hit the second tower or the first tower. And then obviously things got extremely real.
Yeah.
And then, 20 years later, not 20 years, 20 weeks later, we were all at war. So anyhow, all of that is to recap that today we're recording on 9/11, a very sobering day for our generation, and an interesting generational gap in that we have so many Marines in uniform who maybe only remember it through a history class or something that maybe one of the parents have talked about or something, but it's not a visceral memory for this emerging generation of Marines.
Right. I mean, and my youngest son was 2, and where I was watching Elmo on Sesame Street. That was time for the Elmo segment. And my husband, who was at Southcom at the time, was traveling somewhere in the Southcom AOR, and he called me up just in a lather. "Are you watching the news?" And I was like, "No, I'm watching Elmo. Calm down. You need to turn on the news right now." And he told me what had happened. So anyway, the point of all that was that my youngest has no memory of that whatsoever. My older 2 were in school, and they remember, and just a generational thing. A very, it changed. It changed so much about America.
We talk inflection points. We're going to talk a lot about a narrative today. With in the it was there was a very tangible narrative thread in what we were doing for all of its ills and everything that we can criticize and look back on, and even at the time, like, what the fuck are we doing here? There was always that sense of, well, we have to do something, and that something is so tangible that I don't know. Maybe I'm rambling, obviously, but now when we look and we see sort of where forces are being deployed, the state of sort of geopolitics right now, we don't necessarily have that same sort of
cohesive,
right? That actual lived experience of like, well, fucking 9/11.
Yeah.
Now it's like, well, what is going on. And so I think it's maybe more challenging for the Marine Corps and the Department of Defense and folks that are in uniform to have sort of that thing. But at the same time, it's also we sort of got away with a lot of stuff because we had the 9/11 card, if you will.
And for me, so I was coming out of gym class, 5th grade, when the news broke, and my mom came and picked us.
You're in New York.
In New York, and
Yeah.
my dad was in Manhattan. He actually walked. He was one of the people who walked home from Times Square, and we didn't know where he was most of the day. It was very stressful.
Wow.
And to go to this idea of narrative, like I remember going into the administrative office where my mom was waiting to take us home. A bunch of people were going home, and all the adults were crying. And 5th grade, I was 10 years old. I had no idea what was going on, and I'd never seen so many adults so emotional. And then I was in the Marine Corps. Fast forward to the 20th anniversary, I was still in the Marine Corps, and I remember the CO making a speech, and he was younger than me. And he was like, we were at drill that weekend, and he had to make a speech. And his speech was basically, yeah, I don't remember much from the day. I'm sure most of you don't. It was a pretty bad day, and we got it. It was just like it was.
Holy shit!
It was the worst speech I've ever heard my entire time in. And I remember it's like, well, the narrative has shifted now because I remember that day. I have friends who lost parents in the towers, and to have watched it change over these 2.5 decades now, and the shift in tone, part of that is that people relied on it so heavily that people got burnt out on it. It's been when I got to college, in between that 5th grade experience and that Marine Corps experience, it was the first time I started to hear a reverence towards 9/11 too, 9/11 jokes, and like people who were around my age who kind of remember it. Like I'm right on that precipice. 10 years old is like, I have memories of it because I was in New York, but I know other 10-year-olds who don't remember it because they were 10 years old.
Yeah.
And they weren't in New York at the time. And that was like weird for me to go into college and see people like, it's like whenever you put something sacred out there, there's somebody who's waiting to take it down, right? Because it's provocative.
Well said.
Yeah, and I've witnessed that over my life, specifically related to 9/11.
That's gnarly. Well, speaking of your life, because we're going to dive into it, our guest today, the voice that you've been hearing, that it wasn't Nancy working on her ventriloquist act. Our guest today is Michael Jerome Plunkett, who is the author of Zone Rouge. We're going to dive into that. He's the, I want to say, because founder is accurate, but not cool. I want to say you're the inventor of LitHub. Because you're like the creator, founder, but you brought this thing, right?
Well, yeah, so I co-founded the Literature...
Co-inventor.
Yeah, co-inventor with Lieutenant Colonel Tom Schumann, Literature War Foundation, which really started when he was at the Naval Academy. He was teaching English there, and he was basically, Tom has had a very interesting Marine Corps career, and he had just come back from some combat deployments, and in rapid succession, he finds himself Georgetown, getting a degree in English literature, and then teaching at the Naval Academy. And
Friend of the show, by the way.
Yeah. Exactly.
Name drop.
And if you know the Marine Corps, you know that like basically it's all about what you rate and what you've done. And if you aren't at that level, then you're below, whatever.
Unsat.
Yeah, exactly. And if there's anybody who could pull that card, it would be Tom over these young plebes, midshipmen, and he didn't. What he found was that these young men and women were incredibly intellectually curious and wanted to know more and very engaged. And so he wanted to get this out to a much wider audience. And that's when he brought me in. He's like, what's the best way to do this? Well, the best way is to break down the walls of a classroom and take it to the internet, right, to social media. And that's how we started the Lit of War Instagram account. Went from there. We were just posting quotes on a red square, putting it out there. And then, we got ourselves a 501c3 status, and we started doing book drives. And we've been getting books into the hands of the troops now for almost 5 years.
It's awesome.
I
You're
love
also you also started the PB Abate book club.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you're in it. That's sort of the long and short. That's a brief CV.
Fellow podcaster, too.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
It's like we're doing a cross-podification
we
right
are
now.
cross-podifying. Yeah. But so you're a New Yorker.
I am.
and also an EMT.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And before you joined the Marine Corps, you also spent time in finance. Is that right? Or
Yes, brief little period, about maybe 3 years.
yeah. So it's interesting, sort of these inroads. I mean, obviously, the World Trade Center was targeted for, the sort of the extremists' view. It was the symbol of American capitalism, exceptionalism, or colonial sort of symbolized what they viewed as our colonial aspirations, and you being in finance, obviously being a New Yorker right there, center of finance and of sort of the global view of where we were. It's so there are so many interesting overlays. As we are here on the 24th anniversary of 9/11,
Yeah.
It's really fascinating stuff. So, what was your sort of path to the Yellow Footprints? So you're 10 during 9/11. What is that sort of intermediate period, that 7 to 8 years, like for you?
Well, actually, it was even longer for me because
that's right, because you had the finance stuff.
Yeah,
so.
I joined when I was 26, I think, 25.
Oh,
26.
man, you were old.
Yeah.
You're an old recruit.
I was old man of the Marine Corps. And I was, my CV is kind of all over the place, actually. I told my parents I was going to join the Marine Corps if I didn't get into Gettysburg College when I was in high school. Like, I loved the Civil War. I found out there was a college in the town of Gettysburg, and I said, that's it. If I don't get in there, I'm joining the Marine Corps, which I look back on now and I'm like, man, I graduated 2009, so my life could have been a lot different. But I did get into Gettysburg. My parents were very happy about that because my grandfather was a Marine, and he had served at the Chosin Reservoir. He landed at Incheon. He was he fought in the streets of Seoul, the 1st Marine Division, and then he was at the Chosin Reservoir. So they were very well versed in what could happen when you enlist in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
He had enlisted when he was 17 years old, like with the permission of his parents and everything.
Oh gosh.
So he was, he was a proud Marine and everything, but like he went through it. So I got into Gettysburg College, put the Marine Corps away for a little bit. Then I got to college and I looked into the ROTC program there. And then I joined like a million clubs and got a girlfriend and was just like, this is, the Marine Corps was far removed from my mind. And then when I graduated, I was a high school English teacher for a couple of years. That was my first job.
Interesting.
So were you an English major? Is that?
Yeah, okay. I was an English major. I loved my time at Gettysburg. I actually wrote my first novel when I was in college there. I had a professor who really took a liking to me and got me like a couple of grants, so I got to stay in town one summer and I wrote this first novel.
Fucking so jealous.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And I thought, this is it. Like, I'm going to go be a novelist after this. And then I applied to like 10 MFA programs and didn't get into a single one. Like, missed all the way around and was like, well, got to find a job now. I thought I was going to grad school and I'm not. And so I became I was teaching at the high school I went to. And I'd actually graduated a semester early from Gettysburg, and I bumped into my old history teacher, who was now the principal of the school, while I was like grocery shopping. And it was literally a week after I graduated. He's like, do you have a job right now? I'm like, no, I'm waiting to hear back from my MFA applications. He's like, well, if you need to sub, it's a private school. You don't need a degree, like a specialized degree or whatever. So literally a week later, I'm standing in the same classroom that I had my last class in when I was in high school.
That's surreal. Way.
And they were seniors, so they were freshmen they remembered me. So, and it was cool, but it also felt like very quickly it started to feel like failure to launch. It's like, man, I went away to college and I'm back in the same exact. And so I started thinking about the Marine Corps again, because I wanted to go see the world and, all the rest of it. And everybody told me I was crazy. By the time I signed the paperwork, I was a full-time teacher, married, living in Queens, and everybody's like, and you're gonna. And by the way, I decided I was gonna enlist because to go through OCS seemed like way more work and seemed like because they were like, well, you're gonna be selected to go. We can't give you like a guaranteed leave date. And I was like, screw that. I want to be a Marine. I want to be an infantry Marine. That's what I want to do. And then I found out about being a reservist, and I was like, and I can still like stay in New York and everything. So I had my whole story figured out. And, I left June 6th. I literally had to, like, the classes. D-Day. Yeah, exactly. It was D-Day and the day Mike Plunkett left for boot camp. Those are the two historic dates for that. And basically, I I had to find a sub to cover my finals week because I left in the middle of, like, right at the beginning of finals week. So I left with a bunch of kids who just graduated high school, went from being a teacher, and I'm now on the yellow footprints with these. Yeah. Talk about whiplash, man. Yeah.
How did you find yourself in finances? So that was after boot camp, so you were a reservist?
Yeah, because I got back and I was like, there's no way I can go back to being a high school teacher after the experience. We had, right before I joined, we had a guy who was, he had just gotten off of active duty. He was a Marine Corps officer, infantry, and I think he was in the reserves, and he was trying to become a teacher. And he lasted 2 months before he told, and he had a really bad group of kids in this one class. I think he was a bio teacher. He was one of the science teachers. And he lasted 2 months before he told them all, sit down and shut the fuck up, and was fired the same day. Because I'd been talking to him a bunch because I'm like, I'm thinking about doing the reserves. I'm thinking about doing this. And he was like, listen, I'm going to coach you through it. Don't, like, the recruiters, they lie to you. I'll tell you. And then I saw him like a week later in the parking lot. He's like, I think we got him fired because I just told a bunch of kids to shut the fuck up. And I was like, yeah, you can't do that, man. Like,
it's like, no, you will be fired. Yes.
So once I got back from my parasailing experience, I was like, okay, I get it. Like, I'm not going to be able to be the same. Not that I was permanently changed or anything, but I still had the sand of parasailing on my boots. And I was like, I don't want to do this. Like I said, I felt like I liked teaching, but I was like, I'm in this environment where I literally graduated from a couple of years ago. I want to see the rest of the world. And a friend of mine referred me for a position at Fidelity Investments. It was very much like an entry-level position, but I was like, let me do this. English major, walking in, no finance experience, but I had all that boot camp confidence. I walked in there and I nailed the interview and I got the job. And that lasted about a year and a half. And I just was not enjoying it. It was like I said, I wanted to be a novelist. And the whole time I was writing. I'd be showing up to the office early to write before staying late to write. So I ended up, that same friend was like, well, if you're not really enjoying this, I know of this, it was like a small boutique kind of company that did financial software specifically for real estate deals. They had a whole process. So I was like, yeah, let me do that. I did not fit in there at all. I lasted 8 months, and the whole time still writing, still trying to get novels out there, not really succeeding. And I didn't last more than 8 months. And then I ended up taking a temp job at Morgan Stanley for about a year. That was leading right up to the pandemic. And I was like, the whole time I was writing even with more fervor because I was like, I can't do this forever. I was basically an accountant there. It was more or less what I was doing with, once again, no experience. And as a temp, you don't get any benefits. Right. The pay's not great.
Sounds soul crushing.
Yeah, I did temp work in between my graduation from college and then my TBS date. So for those who aren't aware, for Marine officers, especially if you go through, I did the platoon leader course combined. So I did 10 weeks in the summer. Came back for my senior year and then got commissioned upon graduation. Mm-hmm. But there was no TBS date available until, we didn't actually officially start until January of 99. We came in November of 98. Anyway, so I had to wait from basically June. So same thing. I was looking for any damn job I could because I couldn't just hang out in my old, hey, can I just stay in the dorm for a little bit or whatever, And so, I did temp work. And it's brutal.
Right when I got to that job, they had just started conducting like an internal audit to like get their books straight. And they started to miss, they realized they were missing literally millions of dollars. Not that it wasn't stolen. It's just like a bunch of people had retired. New people were coming in and nobody had kept a good system going. Yeah. So I was literally in a place where people's careers were on the line and I was just trying to get into a grad school. So my motivation wasn't really literally witnessed almost a near fist fight between two coworkers. So it was like, I need to get out of here. Oh, and then the pandemic happened right in the middle of all that. So then the world flipped upside down.
Again.
And I was like, and then I got into College of Charleston for my MFA, and I was like, see ya, I'm out of here.
That's awesome. So that was your linkage to South Carolina. So everything had been New York for the most part, other than your parasailing. Where were you? What unit were you with? I
was with 2nd Battalion, 25th Marines.
Okay.
Yeah, Cap Platoon.
Oh, nice. So you wanted to be infantry, went infantry. Were you you were a machine gunner?
Yep.
Okay. So what was that experience like with 25th Marines?
I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was, so my last 2 years, I ended up transferring when I got to Charleston to like just like a supply unit, which was cool and everything, but it wasn't the same, you know?
Like
Like,
Gunny Highway, we just did we just today actually released our separate
I
cinema.
wasn't in on that one. That's right.
Yeah, we did.
I'm anxious to listen.
We have a series for the Road to 250. Folks, please check it out. It's amazing content. But yeah, and so every month we do a different era of Marine Corps history leading up to the 250th birthday. And so this was the Persian Gulf era and 80s and 90s. Sort of bucket.
got it.
And so rather than, diving into like Persian Gulf and stuff, something more obvious, we did Grenada.
Oh, okay.
And so Heartbreaker. So we did a movie review of Heartbreaker Ridge. Anyway, so Gunny Highway, obviously, supply dude before he goes back to recon.
Yeah. That's kind of like,
Get that contraband stogie out of my face before I shove it so far up your ass. You have to set your nose on fire to light it. Anyways.
Yeah, I'd like to pretend like that was what I was like coming in there, but it was, I was ready, I was
Just
playing.
say it.
Yeah.
Just no one's gonna know.
Yeah.
It was with when I was with my cap platoon, it was amazing. Every other week we would go to or every other month we were going to the field, and we would get to do the thing that I signed up to do, shoot machine guns and like throw grenades every once in a while. But it's training. I never got to deploy or anything like that.
How about your unit though? I mean, we're talking 9/11. Did they deploy a lot?
I know they deployed early in the war, and then there was by the time I was in. The way it was working was like multiple different deployments would come down, and then they were turning everybody out piecemeal. So they'd be like, oh, we need 2 NCOs who have these qualifications to go over here. And there was one to Afghanistan that was supposed to be big, and then they just kept changing the numbers, and then eventually they only took a handful of guys.
I see. I think when I was in Afghanistan at 11 and 12, the folks that rotated as our security det out of the Marsden District Center, I think it was 24th Marines. Those are the bubbas in New England.
I believe so.
Yeah. So it was those guys.
Yeah. And it was after that point when I got down to South Carolina. It was a good time down there too. I loved hanging out with those guys as well. But I didn't want to stay in beyond that, so I did my 6 years and then I got out.
Okay. Very cool. And so what were some of your experiences with the MFA? We talked a little bit before we started recording, being a veteran. We've talked a little bit about some of my experiences at a very liberal school here in D.C., but very vet-friendly. American University, loved them. I was very happy with that program, and all of my professors were just top. I can't say enough good things about it, but it was a culture shock for me to be a retired Marine entering into this world that was a complete 180 from where I'd spent the last 20 years. What were some of your experiences?
Well, the thing is, because I went to Gettysburg first and I went through the liberal arts college experience, the one thing I have over all my veteran brothers and sisters was that I kind of was used to that environment already. I had a frame of reference for it. It was very vet friendly. College of Charleston was great with that. They had tons of resources and everything. I never felt made to feel weird or anything like that. But there is that gap of like things that just people don't know. Like even like I was there in the program when Kabul fell, and I remember saying this is going to be really bad. Everybody, like, I could tell they were like, wait, we're still at war? It was kind of like one of those things. And I was saying, you got to realize, like, I remember seeing the videos of all when the Marines landed, that I was like, we've gotten so used to like special forces and all like the cool guy stuff. I was like, the gear I see them wearing is like, these are conventional infantry Marines. Like, this is probably a really bad situation, which obviously it was a complete disaster. And I remember people just kind of, I said, you got to realize, like, in a situation like this, the Marines are being called on like a 911 force. Like, they're being called in like emergency style. And everybody started laughing at me. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. And that was a moment where, so it's not like the system itself, the institution was like set up very friendly, but like there's still that knowledge gap where people just don't realize
a cultural divide.
A very big cultural divide in that specific sense. But the weird thing for me with my MFA was, so I got down there, I was working at a bookstore, Buxton Books, independent bookstore, love them. They gave
Love
me,
a bookstore.
big
I worked at a
independent
bookstore in
bookstore, yeah.
college.
And we have one
Love
down
a
the street
bookstore.
from me called Bard's Alley, man.
Yeah.
I just won't do books anywhere else.
Yeah, so,
like, oh, I have to wait 6 months for this thing?
Yeah.
Fuck it, man.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to give you the business.
because you're really supporting like a
Yeah.
family-run operation, and that's like getting to work there. It was like they were so great. They interviewed me before I even got down to Charleston, middle of the pandemic. Before I even left New York, and I had a job set up so I could pay my bills, which was really nice. And then
Paying bills is good.
yes, being able to, because I was taking a
It's
real
encouraged.
risk. Yes, I was taking a real risk going from
Adulting.
a big boy job, let's say, to like going back to grad school for creative writing.
Yeah.
And I did get funding through the school and everything, so it's not like I was taking on debt, but still you got to pay the
Yeah.
basic day-to-day
You gotta live.
stuff. Yeah. And so I did that, but then I got interested. Like I said when I got down there, I'm going to be a writer. I'm just doing writing stuff. I'm going to work at a bookstore, be a writer, nothing else, because my life had been so chaotic the last couple of years. And then I found out that they were doing an EMT program the January after I got down there. So I've been down there like less than 6 months, and I was like, I got to at least check this out and see what this is about. Because I found out there's a volunteer group on campus. I was like, perfect. So it's not really like, it's just like a club. And I thought like I was going to have to take like a CPR class or something. And I was like, tried to volunteer. And they were like, whoa, buddy, like you got to be a certified EMT. And I was like, what does that entail? And they're like, there's a 6 months course that you can sign up for. And I was like, all right, fine, I'll do it. And like first week I was like, this is way too much work. I did not realize, but I already paid. And I was like, let me see where it goes. And so I ended up loving it and immediately applied for a job in Dorchester County, which is not the city of Charleston, but just north of it. And so the weird part of the MFA was like on Monday I'd be in workshop, and then on Tuesday I'd be like running a cardiac arrest. And like that was like day to day was like completely
So you were like a
different.
no shit EMT.
Yes. I mean,
You weren't just like, I'm certified if you need a Heimlich in a restaurant.
I was on a 911 emergency response ambulance, like running calls. And
Fucking crazy.
yeah, and the thing is, there's no like. I remember the first week of that class, the professor, or not a professor, but our paramedic. He was a flight paramedic, and he was saying like basically trying to weed out anybody who didn't realize what they had signed up for, and was kind of laid it on thick about all the things we may or may not see. And I remember one person raised their hand and be like, "But like when we do our ride along hours, because that's a component you have to get on."
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to put us on, like, the really bad calls, though, right? This guy was like, honey, you're going to get put on whatever call comes through. That's the way this works. And she dropped out after that.
No way.
And I was like, oh, wow, this is real deal. And sure enough, I mean, it was, what I always say about my time in the Marine Corps is 6 years, I was a machine gunner. I never deployed. I never actually did my job. In 6 months of being an EMT, I did everything I was allowed to do and then some. Like I saw everything you could and I wasn't working in like a crazy city. You know, I was working in a suburban to rural environment, and yet there were still people shooting each other, there were still people overdosing, there were still people having heart attacks. You know what I mean? Like that stuff is happening all over the place wherever you go.
Crazy. And how long did you do that?
Did it basically until I moved to Ohio, so it was about 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was part-time when I was in school, and then I went full-time for about a year and a half after I graduated.
So you've had the gnarliest sort of 3 to 5 year windows.
Yeah, I know.
That must have been complicated to compartmentalize and go from, like you were saying, a gunshot wound to an English class, a creative writing class.
A short story, yeah. It was like, a little. But I found it so rewarding. Like I never felt. I saw some bad things, but like I never felt traumatized by it. Because I always felt like, and it seems like the longer you go on in a career like that, it's eventual that a call will kind of haunt you.
Right.
I was only doing it for 3 years, so. I definitely have calls I still think about, but I always felt like I was adding something to the situation. Like I was doing my job in a way that positive outcome can't guarantee that, but I at least was doing what I was trained to do in a way that could help somebody.
What are your thoughts? This is such an interesting point and something I never really even considered. A very, very close friend of mine is a firefighter in Long Beach, California. And same sort of thing, like, especially with the way that California is just like a tinderbox. He's always getting pulled. Like, I don't know in the past 5 years how much he's actually worked in Long Beach. He's been just about everywhere else dealing with craziness. But he never has, and he's been doing it for about he's got to be going well over 20 years at this point. But his experiences, or at least the way he talks about his experiences, are so vastly different than the way that I talk about my experiences. And it seems that, and I'm just now coming to, thinking this through, so it's only going to be half formed, but is there something to the fact that, like you were saying, you showing up as an enabler to help and for good, that gives you that sort of distance of what is going on, vice a Marine that is there to do good and to, for everything that we talk about, is there to help the vulnerable, help those who can't help themselves, but is being shot at and is shooting at people and is like so immersed in sort of the chaos that trauma is harder to distance yourself from, vice an EMT that's coming to a thing like you do the superhero landing, like, I'm here to help, and like, I don't know. Again, it's not a fully formed thought, but is there something to that, you think?
I think to a degree.
Yeah.
Especially because within the Marine Corps infantry, your whole mission is to kill the enemy, right? To close with, engage with, destroy the enemy. Like that's what is drilled into you from boot camp pretty much onwards. And so while you're definitely helping in some ways, it's a very different mentality. And listen, there's a very large overlap between first responder communities and the military. A lot of people come out and they immediately become a firefighter or a police officer or something like that. So you'll see the overlap. I mean, EMS, there's tons of burnout there too, where you get people who are just like, you get to a point where you're so desensitized that you just show up and you're like, you don't feel like Superman showing up. You're just like, oh my God, I was eating lunch and now this person's decided to have this emergency and now I got it. You know what I mean? Like, there is that mentality.
Brains on the wall, body
just like,
in the corner.
Yeah, and you that adrenaline has gone away quite, and I've seen that too. I think there's a mix of that in there, definitely.
Well, and to jump ahead a little bit, your experience as an EMT, how well did that inform you as you were developing your characters for Zone Rouge?
Oh, well, that was the biggest challenge with this novel was that I passed through a French town for about 2 hours around 2013 and was fascinated by it, and it stuck with me for 10 years, and I wanted to write about it, but I'm not French, and when you go to another place...
This is Verdun?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Verdun, right outside, about 2 hours outside of Paris. It was the last stronghold before Paris. For the Germans were stopped there. And Verdun never fell, right? Like they tried to get around it, and they could never, because of kind of the topography and the way that the French had built up their fortresses over there, they could not move past that. So Verdun in the French imagination is very... it's
Thermopylae.
Like, yeah, exactly. Iwo Jima, like all these kinds of like famous battlefields where, Thermopylae is probably the best actually, like where they stopped cold the German advance. And it's still saturated with all these munitions. When I saw that when I got there, I literally was there 2 hours, took a bus tour, found this out. The land is all lumpy and everything from the effects of the artillery. And I wanted to write about it, but I'm a tourist. And when you go to a different place, that was my insecurity, was like, I don't even know the first thing to approach about this culture without sounding like a tourist. So I had to really start thinking about, like, well, what do I know from my personal life that will overlap with these characters in some way that I've created, because most of them are the démineurs, the guys that are paid by the French government. They're part of the department to go out there and purge the land. Pretty much.
And in French, does it literally mean like the D minor?
Yes.
Or the D, is that right?
Démineur is just D minor is like the French word for it, yeah.
Yeah, so they are demining the area.
Yeah, and it's a weird job because apparently a lot of, my whole thing was like, man, every day these guys are going to like risk blowing themselves up. And it's like, well, it's actually a little more complicated than that because it's been over 100 years and they do still blow up. It's kind of rare though. A lot of them are so degraded that they don't even pose a threat necessarily, but you're constantly getting called out to remove these things because people are still finding them. And the really scary thing is that they're leaching all these chemicals into the soil that it's going to be hundreds of years, if not longer, before the land is truly cleaned. I mean, you go there and you just when I went back, I could not keep my eyes off the ground after a certain point because I kept finding these little tiny pieces of shrapnel. It's just everywhere. They feel different than the rocks. It's like a little heavier, a little more jagged, and it was all over the place.
Well, that's how you intro the book, which I thought was such a fascinating aspect of a way into this story.
talking about how they have to essentially run a magnet through the cows or else they'll die because they're eating shrapnel constantly.
It's mixed up into everything, yeah.
But so before I read the book, I did not look at all, to see what it was about. I just wanted to go into it with no knowledge, just cold. And when I read that intro, my initial thought was, oh, this is some sort of fantasy, not a real place. Where is this? And first of all, I was stunned to realize what you were writing about. And then I felt incredibly stupid and uninformed for not being aware that Verdun was still in this state. I had no idea. So in that regard, I love the novel because a novel can do that. A novel can, you can engage readers with creativity, and then that inspires readers, hopefully, to go really learn more about it. It did in my case. It was just like, I was going to say mind-blowing, but that would be a terrible...
Oh, my goodness. It's delicious is what it is.
It's like, it was eye-opening, and, I loved it. I really loved it.
Well, I mean, and we talk a lot, and I'm sure in your MFA experience... It was
I'm
the
here
same.
with 2 MFAs.
I know. How does it feel?
I know.
It's just radiating.
I know. I just feel so... I don't know, dumb.
Break into a haiku.
Yeah, please do.
No, you will.
Oh, right. Okay.
But yeah, and I know it's so cheesy to go right to the beginning, but like your entry, there's this idea of, this engaging the reader immediately, especially with the short attention span that folks have, and that literary pulp is a dying sort of art form. But I mean, the way that you start this thing off, the first line is the cows, they suffer in silence. Like, okay, and then the end of that section, to sort of where it comes back is the cow's eyes don't change. Docil's anything, utterly unfazed. And this is after they just had a magnetic rod jammed down their throat to get the shrapnel out. And so that, just the way that you are in conversation with sort of the mundane, but how the extreme of the absurd has become the mundane in that way. And how that idea really just permeates throughout the book, in that there's this really extreme situation, or this surreal, absurd environment that these people are living in, but yet it is the mundane for them. And we talked a lot about, and I'm going to blow it, but Sisyphus.
Yeah.
With the boulder. Yeah.
The boulder, right? And how that's just the constant thing, that's his existence now, and this is their existence in this surreal, absurd world. I don't know. Am I?
No, it's. I mean, I remember the moment. That's a real process. And I found a video of this, and I remember just watching it and just immediately pausing it and just having that scene just came to me, which isn't always the way it works. Sometimes it's a lot of like tinkering and working through things, but that was pretty much straight down. I was like, I need to get this down exactly, because that sums up everything, right? That's one of those moments where it's just, that's the whole thing right there. And when I started looking, aside from my EMT experience, like when I was looking at what they were doing, Sisyphus was the first thing that came to mind. And I didn't even know that much about the myth. But like that was the image. It was like, you're telling me these guys are going to spend a career doing this very dangerous but boring work, and nobody really knows about it. Nobody really cares. Like, even when I went there, I asked some people in town about this, and they it's a very small city, you know what I mean? I thought somebody will know, and like I didn't meet anybody who knew these guys. They were like, they're around. They get called out when
kind of like talking about the trash guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, come on Monday, pick up my shit.
It's like, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. How wild.
Wow.
So, and I want to go back because I said Lit Hub when we were talking about literature of war, and the reason that Lit Hub stuck in my mind, it's really super catchy. But you wrote an article,
yes, yeah,
in that for Lit Hub, and it talked about your experiences going, because you went back again in 2023. Is that right?
Yeah.
And that's where the sort of the genesis of that article came from, right?
Yeah. So I'd started writing the book in 2020 based off of just my imagination. Like I said, like two hours of experience of walking around. And I do believe that the imagination can take you pretty far. You can get a lot of mileage out of that.
The crux of my existence.
Yeah, like that's what we're fiction writers. That's what we do. Is we just make it's like the part of our brain from when we were kids that like you play pretend. It just never really went away. I think there's a lot of that with fiction writers. But that to be fair, there was like a right and left lateral limit at some point where I was like, I need to, not just like the military stuff or even the battle details. I need to like go there and see like what people are doing in the town square on Tuesday in the afternoon. Like what is happening. And at the time the draft started, that the manuscript I had started with a forest ranger discovering one of these bombs. He tries to take a shortcut through this stretch of woods to get somewhere, and he discovers one of these artillery shells. So I got to Verdun February 2023, just going to spend a week there just walking all over the place. And I wanted to see one of the monuments, and I parked behind the ossuary, and I took this path through the woods, and I kid you not, the opening of my novel started happening because I found an artillery shell. Now, it wasn't a full artillery shell, but it was the nose cone of a 75 millimeter artillery shell. And the thing is, like, going back to Marine Corps training, is like they always tell you to look for anomalies, right? This is like IED stuff. Like, if you're in a natural environment, anything that's unnatural. And I remember walking down the path, and they tell you, don't get off the path. Don't get off the path. Stay where you're supposed to, all the typical things. And it was like a creek bed, very tiny creek bed. And I looked to my left, and my eyes just went like immediately to what looked like a light bulb popping out of like the bank of this little creek. And I like looked around, and I was like, I gotta know. And I walked off the path, which you're not supposed to do. But I walked down, and I just like started like poking it, and it just plopped right out into the little creek. It was just the nose cone of the 75 millimeter artillery shell. And I was like, the novel I created is happening to me right now. It's fascinating.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what a moment.
Yeah.
How did you feel? Did you know right then and there that was your?
I mean, I'd already like written it like that, and I was like, this. It's like I almost created the moment, in my fictional world. It was like becoming surreal. I mean, I immediately picked up the thing and took a selfie with it and was like, I can't believe this is happening. I couldn't take it home with me, obviously, because even though it was a fragment, I was like, if this gets picked up at security, I'm going to be in so much trouble. So I put it back and was like, but it was one of these moments where I felt like the story had real meaning and weight. Yeah.
Yeah, weight. Yeah, that's I think a good way to put it. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit to you. We sort of touched on it a little bit before I started recording, but like coming out of MFA, and like you talk about, like sort of we're sort of kindred spirits in that we're very driven by imagination. It hasn't really been anything that's subsided as we've gotten older. So many veterans who get into the literary world go into memoir, vice fiction. And I wanted to sort of pick your brain a little bit on it. I have some thoughts, but, fuckers hear me talk all the time. So what do you think?
But we love it.
Yeah. Do you love it?
Yeah.
Do you love it so much? This is really here to talk about Michael, but I have a couple points really quick first. What do you think? Like, what is that aspect? Is it that there is something that we as veterans feel like we need to share? Is there some sort of overarching allegory between our life experience and other people's experiences that we're trying to relate and come into community with? Or is it just the easier thing to do is to talk about what it is that I've done?
That's a great question. I mean, I think the hill I will always die on is fiction is worth your time. Fiction is a valid mode of storytelling, and I'm struck specifically in the veteran community how many people will come to me and say, I'm not really interested in reading fiction. I don't want to read stories that didn't happen. So it's especially with like the Patrol Base Abate book club at first. And like the thing that warms my heart the most is when I get a member who said, I never would have read this book if it hadn't been, selected for the booklet. I never would have even thought to. And what I say to this idea that like, well, it didn't happen, so it doesn't matter, is like, let's break down stories here for a second. When you're reading a memoir, you're not reading necessarily what happened. You're reading a story, right? You're taking real life and you're in some ways flattening it onto a narrative. And we see this all the time. There's people who maliciously lie. There's been tons of headlines about that recently where it turns out like they're telling blatant lies. But even so, I'm friends with Carl Marlantis. I've
Name
interviewed
drop.
him. Yeah, interviewed him a couple of times, and he's supported the Patrol-Based Bate book club tremendously. He was our first guest author who came out to Montana, and Carl is a really cool guy and just fun to talk to, and he'll talk about his experiences in combat and how he later would talk to his field radio operator, and they witnessed the same exact event in the same time. We know they were both there, and they have completely different recollections of how it happened. And even years later, it seems to get even wider apart from very basic details. That is something to sit with when you're considering memoir as valid truth, superior somehow to any other story that you can tell.
There I was.
Yeah, exactly. And when you take those details, it's not even a malicious lying necessarily. It's just that when you take reality, you have this whole spectrum of things that happened. And if you're going to put that into a story, you're going to select the details that matter to you, right? And this is what we also see is some people, especially with very personal memoirs, family members will come out and be like, you made me look like a total jerk there.
Yeah.
You didn't talk about the time I took you to get ice cream when you were a kid.
It's that's not how it happened at all.
Yeah. And that's not relevant to the moment, right? So that's what I ask people to consider when they're saying that, this actually happened and these stories are all made up. I mean, my golden example is Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried, How to Tell a True War Story is one of my, specifically for storytelling and exactly what truth means. He talks about happening truth and then actual truth. And, Tim O'Brien is interesting because his first book was his memoir about his time as a draftee and serving in Vietnam. And he kind of rushed it to get it published. He got, he was a Washington Post reporter at the time, was trying to break into being a full-time writer. And he has gone on record a number of times throughout his career saying that The Things They Carried, which is a novel, it is a work of fiction, it says it right there on the title page, is more true to his experience in Vietnam than his actual memoir, where he was just literally describing his experience of being a draftee.
Interesting. I wonder, too, we talked to... Alex Cole, he has this thing called Useful Fiction, and he's written a bunch of stuff. And I wonder about the ability to... And the reason I like fiction, and one of the things that draws me to it, is it takes the... I've always had issues. I find realness, I'm using air quotes here, is being very sticky because of a lot of the things you say. We overlay so much. I've heard it described as we all have our sort of internal encyclopedias. I have mine, you have yours, and we are always overlaying our encyclopedias onto narrative.
That's so true.
And so I'd like to take that realness out. I want a blank slate for people who are going to take in my story. And so I want to pull it from the least real thing that you could even think of, which is why I love science fiction so much, is because I can really tap into allegory without all of the baggage that comes with putting it into a real setting. I don't know. Fuck. Or not. I don't know what. What am I doing here?
I've always been a huge fan of fiction. I was that weirdo on the school bus reading a novel. I read anything I could get my hands on, except not a lot of nonfiction, really, maybe until I'd say junior high age. I think one of the first nonfiction books I ever read was The Killer... Well, no, that was a novel, The Killer Angels. That was a novel. Yeah, I don't know. I was always into the novel. And funny, I made a career telling nonfiction stories as a journalist. I mean, there's not supposed to be fiction in that. And I'm very comfortable working in that space. But I find that if I read too much of it, and I do spend almost all day reading nonfiction, which again, I love, but when I get home and when I want to decompress or relax or reset or get the creative juices flowing, I can't read a nonfiction and have it check those boxes for me or have it do that for my brain. I've got to switch over, and I am really loving what I'm seeing in new fiction coming out.
I love world building.
Oh yeah,
it's such a thing. Oh my God, look at the world that he's created. This is amazing. Tactile. But My other question, I guess, for you, especially because you've been in the literary world now for so long, is it also market driven? Is there
Good question.
quicker flash to bang on a memoir?
It depends on the contemporary moment,
Yeah.
right? Like if there's something in the headlines, there's definitely like a rush to get certain things out. And the publication cycle is a lot quicker. I've had friends who have published memoirs in like a quarter of the amount of time than a novel.
You almost add legitimacy, right? Like, well, I was the task force commander.
Right.
So, of course, my memoir is going to be an exact retelling of everything that happened.
And everybody wants to get there first because everybody's also going to lose interest in about 2 minutes.
Yeah,
So
that's
be
true.
the first one because nobody else is going to want to read the follow-up accounts, unless there's something really controversial about it.
Yeah, that's so good. I think that there's so much value in fiction. What are your thoughts on sort of the military imagination? Is that an oxymoron? Is there a hesitancy to it because there aren't like tangible returns on investment when you're talking about fiction?
Well, no, I think when you look at specifically like American writers, some of our best voices over the last 100 years have been in some way involved with the military or a military adjacent. And I think that's one of the misconceptions so often about the Marine Corps, the Army, whatever, is that they're robots, all the typical things that and I'm sure maybe there are people like that, but I've met some of the most creative people I've ever met in the military. There's
I agree with that.
It's the best group of weirdos you could ever hang out with. You know what I mean? I've had this idea that for a longer piece I've wanted to do about it would take a lot of research, but the post Saving Private Ryan flashpoint where we had this one of the first ultra realistic movies about combat was going back to my grandfather. He had no idea. He signed up for Paris Island and apparently wanted to leave the second he got there. There were no document. Now you go on YouTube, there's a million different documentaries. There's all these influencers. You can get at least an idea of how much it's going to suck, and yet people keep joining, right? So what's that personality like after say, we'll call it the Saving Private Ryan moment, but maybe there's a more accurate one. What keeps people coming back here, and how does that affect the personalities that show up? And what I found is that they're very imaginative. There's a very vibrant culture of veterans and even people still in the military that if you know where to look for it, if you look beyond the surface, which is the kind of more stereotypical stuff.
So speaking of finding it, and then unfortunately this won't come out in time, but you're headed to Politics and Prose here in D.C. To talk with Elliot Ackerman to talk about your guys' books and stuff. Is that, I hate to use this term, but I can't think of anything else, but is that scene, how vibrant is that scene of veterans who are jumping into this fictional, into the fiction ecosystem?
I think it's very vibrant. It's social media's made things way more fractured. It's I think it used to be.
No, you don't say.
I think it used to be more of like you could talk about a scene as a cohesive thing. Now it's been blown so wide open that you can go in a bunch of different directions. I mean, there's, Elliot has been, he's a workhorse. He's so many books out, and he's a real writer's writer. The guy gets up and he writes every day, and you can tell because he's got a book every other year. And he
attacks it almost like a teep, he has his training and evaluation exercise plan.
Absolutely. And that's one way of doing it, but I know of a lot of independent publishers as well, like Dead Reckoning Collective, some friends of mine who've done some really great work, and they focus exclusively on veterans, everything from fiction to nonfiction to poetry, a lot of poetry. And so the scene is there. It just depends what part of the scene you want to get into.
Interesting. And we're talking encyclopedias. I wonder about yours because you've been writing, seems like, all your life. What did writing mean for you as you were coming up? Did you start as were you I've got kids and they love writing.
Mm-hmm.
They love reading. They love writing, which is I'm just
Oh, that's good.
Oh my God, I win.
Well done.
I win.
Yeah.
Was that what it was like for you? Where you just find yourself so drawn to story even as a young man? Or?
Yeah, I mean, in first grade when they start getting you to read, I think I was in the whatever the lowest group was because I wasn't progressing at the right, and I didn't like it. But then I had one of these moments in the 3rd grade where I was told to just read a book, and there was a whole bin of books, and I picked up Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island.
Oh, yeah.
And I ripped, it was the great illustrated classics, right, which were like game changer for me. Like those books, if you're familiar with them, they take these, they're abridged versions of classics, right? So I like read the Moby Dick version, was going around telling all these adults I read Moby Dick, and they were like, this kid read Moby Dick when he's like 8 years old, and found out later that it's like a shortened version, but they have pictures in there, and there are these really great etchings, and that was like probably the first big step where I was just obsessed with reading. I disappeared into another world, you know, and I had never had that experience before. And then it was that same year that I was told to like, today we're going to do a little creative writing, and I just want you to write a story. And the funny thing is, I think some kids, having been a teacher, they want to be told what to do. They want like specific instructions, like an assignment. And that wasn't the assignment. It was just write whatever. And I had this like very freeing experience where I hand wrote like I think my mom still has it. It was like a 10-page handwritten story about just some kid doing something. I think I was
kid
obsessed.
Stuff.
Yeah. You know, it was like whatever. I think I was obsessed with like marbles at the time. So he had like a marble collection or something. I'm sure it was not that interesting, but I had this like adrenaline rush of just like writing and page after page. So it started very young for me, and it has pretty much stayed consistent that way. You know, I went through phases where I wasn't doing as much, but it was always there since I was a little kid.
I would have written a list.
You the taskers?
Yeah, like a to-do list. When you get home from school today first.
Yeah. Mine would have had aliens and laser guns. But so as we're sort of dissecting the process, and like, how has your encyclopedias your various encyclopedia collection influenced your writing? So I mean, as a young man, it was, you know, your experiences in this freeing of the left and right letter limits, like just go ham. Then now you're a young adult, now you're married, now you're a Marine, now you're an EMT, now you're a father. Am I right?
Yep.
So how have all of those things sort of affected your writing? Like, can you look back and be like, oh, that was that phase where I was single. This is that phase where I was married without kids. And look at how.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like when you have a kid, you want the best future for them, and you wouldn't tell them to do what I did, which was like go through all these different jobs. And listen, it's made my life difficult at some points, just because your resume becomes so unwieldy that like during a job interview, that will start to work against you, because they're like, so how do we know you're going to just like leave here in a year and a half?
Are you already out the door?
Yeah, right. Like, what do you do? You just a tourist as like a, you know, career professional guy. I will say that, like, going back to being an EMT, there was no better job in the world for a writer than to be an EMT, because you're literally showing up to people's houses unannounced and getting to see how they live their lives. Like, nobody's putting on pretenses.
Yeah.
They're not, you know, they're
not putting out the good china.
No, not at all. It's not clean often, even if it's, you know, they're just in the middle of every daily life, and you're given this brief glimpse into it where you're seeing in some ways they're being the most honest, and sometimes the most dishonest, because they're like not telling you what they were doing when this thing happened, and they're not giving you all the information for, you know, a variety of different reasons. But it's this weird dynamic where you're giving a unique peering, because that's the thing is sometimes, you know, there's some criticisms about current contemporary literature that has become too institutionalized, it's too academic, these are boring domestic stories. I don't fully agree with that. I do think there might be some truth in that sometimes, like, it's a person who's like only been in a classroom their entire life. You know, I saw that a little bit when I was in my MFA program. That divide would come from the fact that I was now almost 30 years old, and I was in a classroom with kids who were literally 22 and had come from the College of Charleston undergraduate program, and now they're in a graduate program. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to tell somebody to do that or not do that, but I think it stands to reason. It's like, well, what of life have you experienced? And that's not a question you need to answer for me. It's something to think about, because I can tell you when I was going back, like I tried to apply to MFA programs, 22 years old, right out of Gettysburg, I missed all the way. I think I tried to apply to 8 or 10 programs, didn't get into a single one. And I look back and say, thank God, because I had so many other experiences after that that definitely informed the way that I orient myself to the world, the way I interact with the world, and what I draw from those experiences to put into the books.
Well, and it's interesting what you just said about being an EMT and showing up in the middle of people's lives, because I was looking back at the notes I wrote right after I finished Zone Rouge. And what I said is, it's like for me, reading the book, it's like eavesdropping on all these people's lives and somehow being able to feel all the things they were feeling. So that was I don't know if you did it intentionally or not, but that's what I got as a reader, is that kind of feeling, like you were just showing up in the middle of these people's lives and seeing exactly how they lived.
If I did it, it wasn't intentional, but I'm glad that came across, because I think that is
Of course it was intentional. You're a writer, damn it.
But it's the interiority, right? Like that's what, like, so another thing that I've seen in some of the novels I haven't liked as much is they almost read like screenplays. They almost read like very like surface level driven. Like, I like interiority. I like to be able to get into somebody's head and get into like the kind of the messier dynamics, and not just necessarily be pushing to whatever the next beat is.
Yeah. When I was going through my MFA program, one of the things I thought was a compliment was actually a criticism. It was like, this is so cinematic. Yeah. It was almost like the Southern, like, oh, bless your heart, you know?
Yeah.
Like, no, they're saying this sucks. This is shit. I know. To that point, though, one of the things I've done, I know we're running short on time. There's so much I'd love to.
We're going to have him back. We have to have you back, even if we have to do it remotely.
Yeah. But one of the things I've done, well, this is my wife's idea, but I'll take credit for it, is if they want to watch a movie, we want to make sure we really try to get it that it's a movie based on a book, and then they have to read the book first and then watch it. And one of the things I've really loved that they've picked up all on their own is that the lack of interiority when you watch it on the big screen, because like, oh, there's all these details that they missed out on. It's like, well, yeah, because when you're engaging in literary art, you're able to take the time to really dive into and try to walk as much as you, or actually try to walk as much as you can in someone else's shoes for that mile or two.
Yes.
Whereas in the cinematic universe, I'm on a very tight
You're watching it
time because I'm on a tight budget, and I've got all these other things that have to happen in order to get the story out. And so I think that's just so fascinating. I know we're running short on time, but I want to talk to you
so
more.
so much more.
Just really quick, though, as we wrap this up, what are some of your thoughts on what Marines or people in service right now, what can they take away from your writing? What would you like for them to take away from your writing? And then two, what can they do to get out or sort of break this mold of things being templated or sort of run of the mill? Like, how can they tap into their own creativity so that the narratives that they're latching onto are better reflections of them and not of what's market driven?
Of course. I mean, as far as the book goes, I want people to just consider what they have control over, right? That's what Martin, the main character, he is facing a ton of tragedies over and over and over again, and he keeps going forward. And I hope that he's rendered in a way that feels real and realistic, and he just does it one step at a time. You know, like, I don't think with the state of the world right now, it's a luxury to just be pessimistic about it and just throw in the towel.
Cynicism.
Yeah, the cynicism, I don't like that. Is never helped me out in my personal life. So I just hope that when people read this, they consider what they actually have control over in there, because you can't do everything. I know it can feel so hopeless sometimes. That is not an appropriate response. Like, just sit with it for a little while, and what your boulder is, whatever that journey you're on, figure out and really try and come to terms with what you have control over. And then as far as like the military at large, the resources are out there. You know, Patrol Base Abate is open to both active and veteran. So even if you're reservist, active, whatever, you can come and be a part of our programming. The vast majority of our programming is virtual. We go.
I know I need to.
We go out to Montana. We have our return to base program, which is kind of a retreat-based program where we take people out to our spot in Montana for a couple of days. That's a ton of fun. That's not I wouldn't say that's the core of the program. The core is the communities that we build. I've made so many friends, some of whom I still haven't even met in person because they're in like faraway places in the world. But we
That's
meet.
Cool.
We meet on these Zoom meetings. We've had people zooming in from like at night on the opposite end of the world to be a part of our meetings. We're in the middle of the day when we're doing it.
I'm coming to you from the future.
Pretty much, like literally a couple hours in the future. And the resources are there. You know, like I said, Dead Reckoning Collective, they are publishing veteran works right now. They have worked with active duty service members as well. Literature War, get in touch with us. We have, in last year, we funded about 35 free book clubs for active duty military units all over the world.
That's awesome.
We did international, people who were overseas. We did guys who were in the barracks. We did it all. We're, currently trying to rebuild the program a little bit, get our funding in place, but we can do short, like small batches of books. And the cool thing is, like, when we start doing the book drives, it was like whatever books we had to send out. Box of books. And I talked to one guy who was they were deployed to a scary place somewhere doing the work, and they basically said they got one of these boxes, and it was like old romance novels and cookbooks that they couldn't do anything with. And they were like, why did we, and they had signed up for some similar style program. So we weren't doing that, but like what happened was when I would send off these random books, I never heard back from anybody. Like nobody was really, I get it. It's the military. You got a million different things. I get it. But like, I was like, are they even reading them? Like, is this having an effect? So we tweaked it so that you tell us what book you want. We do have a curated list as well if you're a little maybe looking for some suggestions. But if you have a suggestion, we can do everything in our power to make that happen. Get you 20, 25 copies of that book, and then you can read it with your soldiers, sailors, Marines, whatever. So
That's
the
awesome.
resources, you got to be curious though. You have to you can't wait for people to come to you,
Just in life, that's a good rule.
Yeah.
Get out there and find them.
Yeah. So PB Abate, we've had Tom on a bunch, and Nate Boaz, but yeah, active, reserve, guard, coasties.
Yep.
If you've got an ID card, you're in.
Yeah, we're in.
Yeah.
That was Tom's vision from the get-go, and we've held to it.
Yeah, so good, man.
Very cool.
Michael, this has been so great, man. I'm so
Yeah.
and thank you so much. I know this was not easy to get down here, and you've got a ton of shit lined up. So thank you for taking the time and being so generous.
Real
for having
quick, I'm not going to do my standard
we don't-
question.
yeah,
We don't have time for that. We'll do
Next
that
time,
next time
yeah.
around. But where can people find you to know more about you and Zone Rouge?
Yeah, if you go to my Instagram, Michael Jerome Plunkett, I'm there, as well as my website, michaeljeromeplunkett.com. You can find me there as well.
All right, cool.
And-
we will put that in the show descriptions.
And
link
Zone
that.
Rouge available all kinds of bookstores,
Yep,
but look
wherever.
for it at independent bookstores.
Yes, there you go.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you again
Thanks
so
for
much,
coming
and
in.
best
Thanks.
of luck at Politics and Prose.
Yeah.
That'll be. I might try to sneak over if I can.
Love
and
to see you.
Catch you there. But thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
During the month of December, your gift to the Marine Corps Association Foundation goes 3 times as far, thanks to a special triple match from a group of loyal supporters. That's pretty amazing.
That is pretty amazing. It's a great way to make your gift go a little further.
Yeah, and here we are on the on the crux of the holiday season, and obviously, a lot of what we do, we're in receive mode.
Yes.
But here we get a chance to give back. And the thing about giving, usually for me, is I'm happy with a single match.
Yeah.
Because I usually just give and then it's like, hey, take it, have fun with it,
Right.
and go cure your thing. But when I find out, hey, you're going to match what I just gave, that's awesome. And then, like, if you go to the store or whatever and you get a double, like a 2-for-1, buy 2, get a third free. Amazing.
Yeah, that makes so much more sense. And also, I mean, what a great way, like I said earlier, what a great way to make your money go a little farther.
3 times as far,
3 times.
actually.
Not just twice, 3 times
Yeah,
as
this
far.
unbelievable. The fact that we have donors that are willing to do this really is a testament to the association and its members.
It is.
And so just to clarify, though, so every dollar you give, not that we haven't already hopefully articulated this, but every dollar you give will be tripled to provide Marines with leadership forums, unit libraries, and other professional development tools that strengthen them for service today and success tomorrow. So it's almost like you get a triple match, and then this is not just going to benefit today, but it benefits tomorrow as well.
Absolutely.
That's a double inside of the triple.
There's a lot of
It's
math
so
in
much
here.
going on.
There's
Look-
math, there's baseball happening, there's donations.
We're playing 5D chess right now
That's
with
right.
your donation.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Actually,
So,
we're not going to be playing with it.
No.
That just
no playing
again,
with the donation.
just to be clear, Vic Rubel doesn't see nothing that you do is in my wheelhouse, and that's a good thing because it's going to get tripled And it's going to go towards these really great things like unit libraries, professional development tools, et cetera, et cetera. So
And maybe some classes for us to learn how to record PSAs.
that would actually, that would be a probably a 0.5 match.
0.5 match.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, seriously, though, don't miss this chance to make triple the impact by texting year-end 2025 to 91999 by December 31st and support the future of our Corps. That's text year-end 2025 to 91999.
Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. You have heard the voices or contributions from Major Vic Rubel, USMC retired, Nancy Litchman, William Truding, and our guest. Ty Frazier is the editor, sound engineer, and technical producer. The Marine Corps Association is not an agency of the U.S. government. The opinions expressed in this episode are the personal views of the participants and do not reflect the official position of the United States Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, or the Marine Corps Association.